I'm Todd Nauck, an artist for Marvel Comics, and I'm going to walk you through Sensational She-Hulk issues 1 through 4 while I draw She-Hulk right over here. Join me in this nostalgic review of these first 4 issues of She-Hulk's second solo series. I'll also share historical tidbits of the world of comics, Marvel Comics, and She-Hulk's beginning days as a superhero.
This review will contain spoilers.
She-Hulk made her Marvel Comics debut in 1980 in the Savage She-Hulk comic book series, which ran for 25 issues. She-Hulk is one of the last Marvel characters created by Stan Lee, and in 1989, She-Hulk got her second solo series written and drawn by comic book legend John Byrne. She-Hulk would be the first character at Marvel to break the fourth wall regularly and consistently in this series and would become a defining aspect of this character for years and comics to come. Now let's get right into issue number 1. So we begin this issue with She-Hulk spending time at a circus. This circus has offered her space to use as a training ground, and she gets some reps in by lifting a couple of full-grown elephants. We learn here that she can bench press 75 tons, which would put She-Hulk at a class 70 strength. She would be on par with the likes of Grey Hulk, Colossus, Carol Danvers as the original Miss Marvel, Black Bolt, and Doc Samson, just to name a few. So She-Hulk clues in Bruto and the other circus performers, as well as we the readers, about her relationship to the Hulk. Bruto had heard rumor that the She-Hulk and Hulk were cousins, and She-Hulk, of course, confirms this. And she also shares how Hulk spent time in a circus as Meccano, the most powerful, lifelike robot on Earth. That was his title. Hulk was hiding out from the authorities and the Marvel heroes of the day after Loki had set up Hulk for destroying a train bridge in Avengers #1 from 1962. Now, this story led to Hulk becoming a founding member of the Avengers along with Iron Man, Thor, Wasp, and Ant-Man. Now, in 1989, in the Marvel Universe, it seems that the world knows that Bruce Banner is the Hulk. And the She-Hulk's secret identity has been public for a while. It's not secret at all. So as She-Hulk and Bruto leave the tent, there's someone off panel who's firing off some sort of hypno whammy directed at She-Hulk. It's the Ringmaster. So the Ringmaster is this criminal mastermind with a hypnotic-inducing top hat. He was introduced in The Incredible Hulk issue 3 in 1962, and he is the leader of a traveling group of criminals, the Circus of Crime. With his criminal circus performers, Bruto the Strongman, the Human Cannonball, the Clown, 2 acrobat brothers, the Great Gambonos, and Princess Python, the Snake Charmer, as well as other performers that may or may not have a criminal record. So it turns out She-Hulk's invitation to train at the circus, that was all a ruse. It was a ploy by the Ringmaster to use his hypnosis to gain control of She-Hulk to do as he pleases. The Ringmaster has been promised by his mysterious employers that his Circus of Crime will get $3 million for this scheme, but the payout to the others, of course, is at the Ringmaster's discretion. Meanwhile, some people in lab coats in a high-tech facility are spying on the goings-on at the circus. One of the lab coats has a plan in action against She-Hulk, and he's the one who has hired the Ringmaster and his Circus of Crime. But is this scientist enacting his own evil schemes or acting on someone else's behalf? Back to the circus. Ringmaster uses his hypno power to get She-Hulk to tell us her backstory. She first recounts how her cousin, Bruce Banner, became the Hulk on a gamma bomb test site, and this is a particular bomb that Bruce himself had invented. Some people may not be aware of this, but the Hulk was colored gray in his very first issue in 1962. It is said Stan Lee wanted the Hulk to be gray to not correlate the character of the Hulk to any specific ethnicity. While still gray in the story for issue 2, a coloring mistake at the printers made Hulk green on that issue's cover. Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were rumored to have liked the contrast that the green provided the Hulk, and they made the official change to fully green for the Hulk in issue number 3, and he would stay that way for years and decades to come. Later, after becoming the Hulk, Bruce comes out to California to visit his cousin Jen, who is a practicing lawyer, to seek her legal advice for what might be his degree of responsibility for his actions as the Hulk. Jen was also working a case against some mobsters at that time, and they had put out a hit on her. Jen and Bruce were chased down by the mobsters' hitman, and she was shot. Bruce and Jen were able to escape the assassins, but with a bullet in Jen's back, she was losing a lot of blood, and Jen's life began to wane. Bruce performs an emergency blood transfusion with his own blood to keep her alive long enough to get her to a hospital. Now, these two were very close growing up. They were like siblings, and Jen's childhood nickname for Bruce was Dog. And fortunately, Bruce remembered that he and Jen share the same blood type. However, Bruce's blood is tainted with gamma radiation, so there was a risk of infecting Jen without knowing what the effect on her could be. But without the transfusion, Jen would certainly die before getting proper medical attention. Now at the hospital, and Jen is recovering from life-saving surgery, the mobster's goons infiltrate her room, posing as doctors in order to finish her off. But the gamma-irradiated blood does the same thing to Jen as it does to Bruce, and Jen has her own personal Hulk out. Jen is now 6'7", green, and super strong. She dispatches the thugs in no time and begins her life as a Savage She-Hulk. There's a lot more to that story in the 1980 Savage She-Hulk series. She-Hulk mentions her time as a member of the Avengers and as a member of the Fantastic Four, and how she took an extra dose of radiation to permanently become the She-Hulk. This was a story that was revealed in the 1985 She-Hulk graphic novel. After this quick origin story, to get the new readers up to speed, Ringmaster is now ready for Phase 2. They have been hired to test She-Hulk, and Ringmaster has a way to earn some extra dough on top of that soon-to-come $3 million payout from their mysterious benefactors. The Ringmaster turns to his circus's makeup wizard, the Professor, to reveal what he has been working on, turning She-Hulk into the newest member of the Circus of Crime, the powerhouse named Glamazonia. But Zelda, aka Princess Python, the snake charmer, is none too happy about this. She is supposed to be the belle of the ball at this circus and doesn't like the idea of competition. But Ringmaster allays Python's concerns for the time being, as Glamazonia's role is only temporary, and Glamazonia is to be put into action at tonight's free circus show. Now people pour in and notice there is only one set of bleachers and the seats have seatbelts. Why would a set of bleachers have seatbelts? Because Glamazonia is going to lift that entire set of bleachers with her super duper strength. And then Ringmaster hits the captive crowd with a hypno whammy, and they're unaware of what's happening now. So under the Ringmaster's thrall, Glamazonia turns the bleacher upside down and shakes the wallet, valuables, and money from the pockets of the belted-in audience. The Circus of Crime collects the goods, and the bleacher is put back, and the Ringmaster puts a hypnotic suggestion on the audience that they had just seen the greatest show on Earth. The circus just added a cool $3,700 on top of the $3 million they're going to make for this little venture. But just as the Circus of Crime has gathered up their ill-gotten gains, look out! A runaway wagon is heading straight for them. But Glamazonia smashes the wagon to bits with one punch. The scientist benefactors continue to watch the testing of She-Hulk as Glamazonia. There appears to be a very delicate nature to one of the scientist experiments, and it involves an unharmed She-Hulk. The main scientist now wants to get involved in the project, though. He's disguising himself as a giant gorilla, and he enters into the circus. The circus members bicker about the runaway wagon. Princess Python is accused of the mishap as a result of her jealousy of Glamazonia, but Python was on the other side of the tent and nowhere near that wagon. At this time, they notice a gorilla at the window and dispatch Glamazonia to apprehend this escaped gorilla. They are unaware this gorilla is their benefactor in disguise. Glamazonia, or She-Hulk, still under Ringmaster's hypnotic thrall, smashes out of the office wagon and chases after the gorilla. The gorilla-disguised scientist leaps over to the Ringmaster to steal his hypno hat and uses it to reverse the hypnosis placed on She-Hulk to turn her attention off of him and back onto the Circus of Crime. The circus tries to flee from She-Hulk, but she makes quick work of them, taking them into custody as they wait for the cops to arrive. At the police station, She-Hulk is able to wash off the Glamazonia makeup, and the officer lets She-Hulk know the Circus of Crime has a long rap sheet and will be going away for a long time. Jen finds out the real reason behind the runaway wagon from earlier. Turns out the professor had a crush on Princess Python, and he sent the cart careening at Glamazonia as a way to apologize for his role in making She-Hulk Python's pretty replacement. The officer provides some clothes for She-Hulk, since her original She-Hulk costume had been shredded when she was turned into Glamazonia. She-Hulk points out that these clothes are a bit small and a bit snug, and she states that with one deep breath, her adventures would have to be printed in the Epic line of comics. Epic was a line of comics at Marvel that was a bit of a more mature line of comics, mostly creator-owned comics, but they'd also occasionally feature Marvel Comics characters in certain types of stories. She-Hulk goes to the cell where the circus is being held, and she wants to know what's really going on. They didn't do all this just to shake down a few $1,000s from a small attendance of circus goers. Ringmaster immediately spills the beans. They were to be paid the $3 million to test the extent of her strength and invulnerability.
She-Hulk wants to know who had hired them, but all communication had been done through an intermediary. The circus doesn't know who hired them.
Now, She-Hulk is very annoyed by this lack of information. She's even more annoyed that she won't know who hired the Circus of Crime until issue number 3, while the readers will find out on the very next page. She-Hulk has very obviously broken the fourth wall here, but she only ever really does this in her own comic series. She doesn't break the fourth wall or know she's in a comic when she appears in comics and stories outside of her solo series. So the scientist disguised as the gorilla shows back up at the lab that he shares with his partners. The bald scientist had called the cops. He did this to protect She-Hulk from possible damage in the big slugfest. The gorilla scientist is cool with this because now they don't have to pay the circus the $3 million. This money can continue their efforts, the schemes and plans of the Headmen. The Headmen were first introduced in the 1970s series The Defenders. They consist of Dr. Arthur Nagin, the Gorilla Man, a scientist head surgically placed on a gorilla's body. Dr. Nagin is a genius surgeon using apes for interspecies transplant research. Dr. Gerald Jerry Morgan, aka Shrunken Bones. He's a scientist who used a shrinking gas similar to Ant-Man's size-reducing Pym particles, but his experiment went wrong and left him with a slightly reduced size skeleton, leaving his skin hanging loosely on his form. His ultimate goal is to be recognized for his intellect. Thursday Rubenstein, aka Ruby Thursday, a brilliant woman who wants to replace everyone's head with a plastic head like the one she has designed for herself. Then there's Chandu the Mystic, a sideshow magician turned criminal turned monster after a series of failed brain transplants into other bodies. Chandu is currently in the body of a chimeric monster at the time of this story. It is the Headmen's plan to find a new, more powerful, and less freakish form for Chandu, and their plan? It all relies on She-Hulk. We start issue 2 with She-Hulk and Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp. They are at one of the Wasp's many homes, a New York high-rise apartment. Janet is a super rich fashion icon. And we will notice there is a running gag of post-it notes from the editor-in-chief, Tom DeFalco, editor of the series, Bobby Chase, and writer-artist of the series, John Byrne, attached to the panels. It's a running gag for like the first 8 pages of the comic, and the editor-in-chief wants to know why we're getting the tour of Wasp's apartment over multiple pages. He claims Stan Lee and Jack Kirby would be giving us big action and exploding universes by now, not Millie the Model and Architectural Digest material. The editor assures the chief that the big splashy superhero stuff is coming. Now, Jen mentions one of She-Hulk's old boyfriends, Wyatt Wingfoot, who's an associate of the Fantastic Four, and Wyatt will be making appearances in this series in future issues. The Wasp is offering the apartment to She-Hulk since She-Hulk is looking for a new place to live. But unbeknownst to the two of them, they're being spied on by Ruby Thursday, who is sending intel back to her fellow Headmen. After the Headmen recap their scheme with the Ringmaster from last issue, Ruby hints at another mystery accomplice they have offered $3 million to further test She-Hulk's abilities. As She-Hulk settles into her new dig, she makes plans to look for new employment. She's not sure if people would hire a jolly green giantess as a lawyer nowadays, so she's open to a new line of work. A news report comes in about hundreds of alien spacecraft appearing over Manhattan. She-Hulk rushes to her balcony to see this, the skyline full of alien warships descending on Manhattan. She-Hulk wonders to herself how many invading ships could get so close to Manhattan before being noticed. Where were the Avengers or the Fantastic Four? Where was Spider-Man? But as she realizes these ships look somewhat familiar to her, a mysterious gloved hand punches keys on a pad and laser blasts come raining down from above, striking at She-Hulk's feet, sending her flying backwards. Shocked that she'd be their first target out of all of New York City, she's more shocked to see is an invasion of the Toadmen. She takes a moment to break the fourth wall and calls out to writer-artist John Byrne for bringing in one of Marvel's more ridiculous alien beings for this story. The Toadmen were introduced in Hulk's second issue back in 1962. They came to Earth and kidnapped Bruce Banner, demanding the Earth's technological knowledge from him. And now they are back, and it looks like they have set their froggy eyeballs on She-Hulk. Meanwhile, at the Manhattan Municipal Building in New York City, a woman named Louise brings her boss reports on Jennifer Walters. They appear to be completely unfazed, if not unaware, of the massive alien invasion happening just outside their doors. As they discuss Jen's credentials, it seems Jen's law skills are exactly what this guy is looking for. Meanwhile, back at She-Hulk's rooftop balcony, she and the Toadmen are waiting for our return from the previous page's interlude. The Toadmen open fire on She-Hulk, and she realizes these half-dozen troopers are the only ones dispatched from the entire armada, and they are solely focused on her. She-Hulk grabs the alien blaster and crunches it in half, only to discover it's an ordinary M16 rifle. She-Hulk grabs a hold of the Toadman as the other Toadmen make their escape and notices his distinct Cockney accent, and that his skin seems more rubbery than organic flesh. She unmasks the Toadman and sees that he's a normal human, and she asks him if he was hired by the same person who hired the Ringmaster last issue. So the unmasked human gets the drop on She-Hulk and pops her in the face. She's more startled than hurt due to her Hulk-like invulnerability, so She-Hulk drops the man and he scurries to leap over the building's ledge to escape. She thinks he's taking a leap of doom, so she rushes over to rescue him and hits some sort of barrier. It feels like canvas, so she tears into it to discover the real New York City on the other side with no sign of a massive alien invasion. The whole scenario is a giant matte painting draped over her skyrise apartment from a blimp above. And she sees the fake Toadman climbing the cables back into the blimp and jumps up after them. She-Hulk enters the blimp to discover the person who has orchestrated this entire situation, none other than the Amazing Spider-Man villain, Mysterio. He uses his gadgets and resources to disorient She-Hulk, but she's not falling for that and gains the upper hand, until Mysterio blasts her with a strange gas. Cut back to the Headman's lair. Mysterio has delivered an unconscious She-Hulk to them. Gorilla Man invites Mysterio to join the Headmen, but Mysterio's only in it for the cash. He takes his $3 million and leaves. But it is revealed that the case of money is just cut newsprint, with only actual currency being on the top layer. Shrunken Bones is nervous that Mysterio is powerful enough to seek revenge over this betrayal. But Gorilla Man has ensured that Mysterio will not be a problem and no longer be able to meddle in their schemes. They turn their attention to their main goal, providing a new body for Chandu the Mystic. Chandu has gone a bit insane not being able to acclimate to this monstrous body Gorilla Man had constructed for him. But all will be set right once they get Chandu's head on a more human and far superior form, the form of She-Hulk. The psycho-transplant surgeon Gorilla Man fires up an electric buzzsaw and brings it down towards a still unconscious She-Hulk. Issue 3 promises the thrill of a guest star, the Amazing Spider-Man. Now at this time in the late 80s, Spider-Man's flagship comic, The Amazing Spider-Man, had just gotten super hot with a brand new series artist, Todd McFarlane. Certain characters were to ensure a bump in sales just by their appearances in a comic book story, or sometimes just on the cover alone. Wolverine, Ghost Rider, Punisher, Spider-Man, they were the Mount Rushmore of a sales spike in the late 80s and into the early 90s. And we start this issue with Spider-Man picking up the thread of this story in what just may be the first homage to Todd McFarlane's legendary cover to Amazing Spider-Man 300 and 301. This cover has been homaged countless times. Marvel has even hired me to homage this cover about a dozen times with different characters like Deadpool, Black Cat, Silk, Jane Foster, Ant-Man, and most recently, Miles Morales. Spidey is swinging through New York City, and Spider Sense is going off non-stop, all around one particular building. He sees it's where Mysterio is hiding out, and that whatever is in the briefcase Mysterio is carrying, that's what's setting off his danger sense. So Spidey begins to follow Mysterio to see what nefarious plot that Mysterio might be up to. Meanwhile, back at the Headman's headquarters, Gorilla Man and Shrunken Bones are considering their objectives with She-Hulk. She seems to be in fine form, and no problems at all, except she's missing her head. Her head is somewhere in the building, and it's breaking the fourth wall to tell us readers some borderline dad jokes. She takes a pie to the face and returns us to the story already in progress. Turns out Spidey had already confronted Mysterio, crashing his car, and Spidey now has the briefcase filled with the Headman's payout to Mysterio. Spidey clues Mysterio in that it's filled with mostly fake money, much to Mysterio's shock and chagrin. Fishbowl got played. So Mysterio clues Spidey in that the Headmen are behind this and that they have She-Hulk. Spidey heads out to their base of operations now, revealed to him by a betrayed and bitter Mysterio. Back at said hideout, Chandu is out of his cage and is in a full-fledged freakout. He was supposed to be tranquilized to dull his maddened mind. Ruby Thursday uses her malleable plastics of her head to create tendrils to subdue Chandu, but Chandu's flailing about lifts Ruby off the ground and sends her flying about the lab. Spidey arrives just in time for a rescue for Ruby and a webbed quilt to restrain Chandu. Ruby turns on her rescuer and clobbers Spidey with an extending hammer construct, and then launches a barrage of plastic spikes. Spidey leaps out of the line of fire and directly into the simian midst of the Gorilla Man. As Spidey gains the upper hand, Shrunken Bones plays his card, revealing the misplaced but still very much alive head of She-Hulk. Spidey is shocked to see what they've done to She-Hulk. Shrunken Bones can now control She-Hulk's headless body with a tablet and sends her charging after Spidey. He warns Spidey that harming She-Hulk's body will cause an end to the life of her head. While Spidey is fighting She-Hulk's body, her head is coming back to consciousness. And She-Hulk realizes she's not whole. Her head is hooked up to life-sustaining tech while the rest of her is attacking Spider-Man. Now all the headmen attack Spider-Man to overwhelm him and to gain the upper hand, which She-Hulk's body does, whacking Spider-Man into a wall and knocking him out. And now Gorilla Man sees an opportunity to have options for their transplant operation for Chandu. We cut over to the Manhattan Municipal Building from last issue. Louise, also known as Weavesy, approaches her boss with a bulletin about Stilt-Man's escape from custody to set up a subplot for issue 4. But back at the lab, Gorilla Man is finishing Chandu's transplant surgery. Gorilla Man had planned on Spider-Man's sense to discover Mysterio after Mysterio had left the Headman's lair. Gorilla Man had hoped Mysterio's encounter would lead to Mysterio's death at the hands of Spider-Man, not lead Spider-Man to their lair and delay their procedure. Gorilla Man don't know, Spidey don't kill. The operation is complete, and the sedatives Gorilla Man had administered should have cured Chandu's madness. Chandu does feel more mentally stable until he rips off his surgical gown to reveal his head is now on She-Hulk's body. In past stories in other Marvel comics, Chandu has had his brains transplanted into the likes of the Defender Nighthawk, a Fawn, and his former Chimera monster body. But Chandu is not happy with this choice or the results. However, Spider-Man's mutagenic radiation disqualified him as a candidate for Chandu's new body. Chandu has had enough of Gorilla Man and the Headman's manipulations, and he rages against them all. She-Hulk, only being a head, is helpless to do anything but watch the madness. Chandu still wants to be on Spidey's body despite the incompatibility. And with Spidey's comic book resurgence in popularity and getting to be drawn by Todd McFarlane, can you really blame Chandu? But Spidey makes short work of Chandu and quite literally knocks his block off, mainly because Gorilla Man didn't fully connect Chandu's head to She-Hulk's body. Spidey's scientific inspection reveals the head was attached by some of the more critical wires rather than a securely attached head. Spidey turns to She-Hulk and tells her she can stand up now. Wait, what? Strangely, She-Hulk can feel her body still connected to her neck, and it's obscured from sight under the harness her head is resting on. She can now break herself free. Unfortunately for us, the breaking free sequence, it's a fourth wall joke, where they just cut to the chase. Not Editor Bobby chase, but this chase, the fleeing headmen. She-Hulk and Spidey drop down into the ground level of the hideout where the headmen are trying to escape in this ginormous, heavily armored tank. She-Hulk lands in front of the tank and she tears it to shreds. And Spidey and She-Hulk just go ahead and take down the headman. Spidey clonks Ruby Thursday and Shrunken Bones, while She-Hulk deals with Gorilla Man. And they package them up and hand them off to the proper authorities. She-Hulk asks Spidey how he knew that wasn't her real body. Spidey tells her that when he looked inside the control collar, he could see a tiny vestigial head, a remnant from the Headman's cloning process. Chandu's She-Hulk body was a clone and never the real She-Hulk. Besides, the Headman probably wouldn't have a saw blade durable enough that could cut through a Hulk level of invulnerable skin. And She-Hulk and Spidey walk off into the sunset, pondering Chandu's fate as just a head. We start issue 4 with She-Hulk in the apartment that the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, is lending her. She-Hulk is trying on some outfits, and she's trying to pick the right outfit for a meeting with her potential new boss. She breaks the fourth wall and greets us, the readers. She's running late and she needs to pick an outfit. So now we are in essentially a 1980s dressing room montage, as She-Hulk tries on various outfits that do not seem to fit the occasion she is preparing for, till she lands on a smart gray business jacket and skirt combo with a definite 80s shoulder pads. She-Hulk strides out of her bedroom and is approached by a butler and a personal cook. They are letting her know that they are turning in their notice and stepping down from these positions. They feel it's just too dangerous serving under She-Hulk's employ. Their continued work there could lead to the cancellation of their life insurance policies. They were happy to have served the Wasp, and even the Wasp's at that time ex-husband Hank Pym, aka Ant-Man, mainly because they were never around all that much and there was no reason for supervillains to attack. So they are now out of there, and She-Hulk doesn't want them to leave. at least not until she gets her new robot butler that she mentions won't happen until around issue number 9. Now alone and way late, She-Hulk asks writer-artist John Byrne to help her across town to make her appointment on time. Just one of the perks of knowing you are a comic book character and can call out to the creative team for the occasional plot convenience help. Meanwhile, 3 months earlier, it's late at night as a woman in a leather jacket, fringe skirt, and cowgirl boots stands pensively in the parking lot of a truck stop. As truckers mill about, this woman scans the lot looking for someone who apparently frequents this stop, according to the CB radio chatter. She's been tracking this mysterious person down and seems desperate to meet up with them as soon as possible. A diesel truck rolls in with a big blast from the horn. This rig is huge and gets everyone's attention. All eyes turn as the rig comes to a stop with a heavy release of air from the diesel exhaust brakes. The woman steels her nerves and steadies herself for the meeting. A voice asks if she is Miss O'Connell. As she begins to stammer out a yes, a giant man-beast stands before her, silhouetted by the diesel truck's headlights. Cut back to She-Hulk as she enters an office. The previous page of subplot, it allowed her to make it across town in no time. She-Hulk begins to introduce herself, but is interrupted by the short, older woman that we had seen in issue 2, Louise Wheezy Mason. She is the one who reached out to She-Hulk and arranged this meeting for an interview with her boss. But Wheezy lets 2 things slip. 1, she has her own reasons for wanting She-Hulk to get this job, and 2, she understands that she'd only be a supporting character. Does Wheezy also know she's in a comic book? Wheezy ushers She-Hulk further into the office to introduce her to District Attorney Towers. She-Hulk is now all of a sudden seated in a chair and seems to be coming to. It looks as though she had fainted. She-Hulk chalks it up to low blood sugar from skipping breakfast. DA Towers suggests that she go home and get some rest. They can conduct business when she's feeling better. Wheezy leads She-Hulk out as She-Hulk feels a bit embarrassed. She didn't expect to meet the series' romantic interest so soon. Wheezy highly doubts the love interest possibility and lets She-Hulk know that Mr. Towers is married with 2 daughters. She-Hulk is livid and calls John Byrne out. She is ready to climb out of the panel and give John Byrne a thorough beatdown. But Wheezy pulls She-Hulk back, reminding her that they are already inked and colored. The story has already been printed, and we are reading the story, and there's nothing that they can do about this plot point. To help She-Hulk calm down, Wheezy takes her to lunch by stepping across panel borders to her favorite restaurant. She-Hulk is confused by this. How did Wheezy do this? Wheezy lets She-Hulk in on her secret. Wheezy was once the Golden Age superheroine, the Blonde Phantom. Back in the 1940s, Wheezy was Louise Grant. She worked as a secretary at the Mark Mason Detective Agency. She had quite the crush on Mr. Mason, but he was only interested in Wheezy's alter ego, the Blonde Phantom. She had doe eyes for him during the day as Louise Grant, but bailed him out of jams at night as the Blonde Phantom. Tired of waiting for Mason to catch on that Louise and the Blonde Phantom were one and the same, she told him her secret. He proposed right away, and they were married after her comic strip came to an end in 1949. Wheezy asks She-Hulk how old she is, and She-Hulk replies that she's 31. Wheezy tells her that she'll stay 31 as long as she stays in comics. When Wheezy and Mark were no longer featured in comics for years, they started to slowly age. But then one day they see Golden Age characters like Captain America and Namor the Submariner were brought back into the comics not a day older than they had been in the days of World War II. Captain America and Namor were originally published as Timely Comics characters and slipped into obscurity after the Golden Age of comics. But Stan Lee and Jack Kirby brought them into the Marvel Universe in the early 1960s, first with Namor in Fantastic Four issue 4, and then Captain America in Avengers issue 4. Mark and Louise hoped that they'd get pulled out of comic book obscurity soon after. They waited and waited. Mark Mason passed away at age 72. But if he was still a comic book character being brought back into the 1960s comics like Captain America and Namor, he'd still be 35 years old, even then in the late 1980s. Wheezy is about 10 years younger than her husband, so she's about 62 years old now. She got a job as a secretary to District Attorney Towers at City Hall, and she recommended She-Hulk to Towers. Once hired, Wheezy would have a role in She-Hulk's comic as a supporting character, and thusly, she'd stop aging. She-Hulk is taken aback by this newfound knowledge, but she doesn't have time to think about it long as an extended metal pillar smashes their table. It can only be Stiltman. Stiltman? Yes, Stiltman, introduced in Daredevil number 8 in 1965. Wilbur Day, scientist, inventor, and engineer, worked for a man named Carl Caxton. Caxton invented a hydraulic ram type of device. Wilbur stole these designs and incorporated the hydraulics into his telescoping metal legs as part of his battle armor and began a criminal career. Now, Stiltman had escaped from prison and is seeking revenge on the one who had put him there, District Attorney Towers. She-Hulk isn't going to let that happen to her potential new employer. She-Hulk chases after Stiltman. She gives a mighty leap up to Stiltman, but Stiltman is ready for her and delivers a high-voltage shock from his battlesuit, which sends She-Hulk careening to the alley below. But as a gamma-powered hero, it'll take more than an electric shock and a fall to stop her. She grabs Stiltman by the stilts and brings him all the way down to street level. Stiltman uses his hydraulics to push She-Hulk away. He's able to right himself, stand up, and begins to pummel She-Hulk into the ground over and over again until she's about 30 feet underground. And she begins to break through into the subway tunnels. Just about her head and upper torso, though, just as a subway train comes rumbling down the tracks. Trapped here, She-Hulk's invulnerable head tears a seam down the center of the subway train's roof, much to the surprise of the passengers. But this is New York City, and I'm sure they've seen weirder stuff on the subway. Meanwhile, Wheezy wonders if this is an opportunity for the blonde Phantom to make a comeback. Maybe not, but she's got a brain and formulates a plan, if the restaurant chef is willing to help. Wheezy and Luigi, who is carrying a large pot full of something, race to get ahead of Stiltman. Wheezy directs Luigi to dump the contents, the vat full of lard, into Stiltman's path. The slippery ground steals Stiltman's footing and stability. With his stilt bases covered in lard, his feet are compromised. But he does have a backup plan. He can detach part of his hydraulics from the lower part of his stilts and keep on moving in his quest for revenge. Now at the City Hall Municipal Building, Stiltman preps his blaster to take revenge on District Attorney Towers. But at that moment, an emerald arm punches his way up through the pavement. She-Hulk emerges, and she is ready to put a stop to all this. Grabbing each leg of Stiltman's suit, she pulls them apart like splitting a wishbone, and Wilbur Day comes falling out of his armor suit right into She-Hulk's waiting arms. And then he's handed off to the proper authorities to be taken back to prison. Wheezy walks up with She-Hulk's suit, jacket, and skirt. She-Hulk wants to know how Wheezy did the walk across panel border gimmick, and Wheezy lets her know it's not too difficult when you know you're a comic book character. But Wheezy wants something explained to her. With all the slugging it out with Stiltman and getting stomped into a subway tunnel, how did She-Hulk's chemise not get torn to shreds? She-Hulk realizes there had been some changes since Wheezy was last in comics back in 1949, and directs her to look at the label in the back of her chemise, a label that reads, "Protected by the Comics Code Authority." The Comics Code Authority has a long history, but essentially it was enacted in 1954 as a response to the content in comics. This was a little like a rating system regulating the amount of graphic violence, horror imagery, and adult themes in comics. And as a code-approved comic, She-Hulk's outfit couldn't get shredded because running around in her all-togethers would be outside of what the code would allow. As She-Hulk and Wheezy go to finish lunch, something is going down elsewhere. A figure in a black business suit has just signed a 99-year lease on an apartment. He has his sights on a specific unit and has bought out all the previous tenants. The manager places his nameplate on the directory, just below Jennifer Walters' nameplate, She-Hulk's apartment. And we can see the creative team listed as tenants in the other slots, a fun way to list the credits. We learn that the mystery man's name is Mr. Powers, adventurer. As Mr. Powers walks away, a woman asks the manager if She-Hulk is at home. She has an important message for her, and the manager informs the woman that She-Hulk is out for the day and begins to offer help before she is abruptly interrupted by the woman. And then this woman strides over to a limousine. She is apparently the chauffeur and informs a bald businessman who sits in shadow of She-Hulk's unavailability. This man, Mr. L, states that he spent a great deal of effort to get to where they are, and he seems to need She-Hulk to be a part of his plan to destroy his greatest enemy. Who is this man, and who is his enemy? I'll say this much. He looks like Lex Luthor and his valet Mercy. John Byrne had written and drawn a run in the Superman comics over at DC Comics in the late 1980s before returning to Marvel Comics around 1989. Could this be the seeds of an intercompany crossover? No, it's not. Not sure if we'll see Mr. L again as some new character in the Marvel Universe, or if this was just a gag for longtime readers of John Byrne's comics. Only time will tell. But we wrap this issue with She-Hulk noticing something about her series. It is following a similar format to the Fantastic Four's first 4 issues. Aliens in issue number 2, the return of a Golden Age character in issue 4. Does this mean that Dr. Doom will show up in issue 5 of Sensational She-Hulk like he did in issue 5 of Fantastic Four, which was Dr. Doom's first appearance? Wheezy postulates the improbability of that due to this comic's policy of only featuring lame villains. But we are then teased with a final caption for next month's issue, "The Doctor is in." And there we have it, the first 4 issues of Sensational She-Hulk. It was a lot of fun to reread these comics and take you all through this walkthrough. And it was also a lot of fun to draw this illustration of She-Hulk as well. If these stories sound interesting to you and you want to learn more, please visit your local comic shop to discover all sorts of characters, worlds, and adventures. I have posted a link to the comic shop locator website in the video description below. You can use this website to enter your zip code and find comic shops that are near you.
You can read these 4 issues and more in the Sensational She-Hulk Volume 1 trade paperback. These 4 issues and other She-Hulk stories are also collected in the She-Hulk Epic Collection, Breaking the Fourth Wall. You can check in with your local comic shop to see if they have either of these books available. They're a lot of fun. John Burton's stories and art are great, as you've seen in this review, and you can experience more of these really fun She-Hulk adventures in either of those great trade paperbacks. All right, so now we're just putting in some of the final details here onto She-Hulk. And it's a lot of fun drawing her. She's one of my favorite characters, as you can see. And I hope you had a lot of fun with this video. I plan to have more videos coming up soon, so please do stay tuned for that. I appreciate all of your support.
Please be sure to subscribe to my channel and set your notifications to alert you when I post new videos. And a thumbs up is a great way to support my videos. And if you know of anyone who might enjoy the content like this, please do share this video with them. These things go a long way in helping support my channel and helping my channel to grow. I appreciate all of your support, and I thank you so much for watching. So until next time, I'm Todd Nauck. Keep reading comics, keep on drawing, and keep having fun. See you next time, everybody. Bye-bye.